Hello, everyone. I'm Taylor here with,
Corey Spivey.
and welcome to the BALListic report. We're here. We didn't think it was going to come to this, but the Titans fell short of victory today, taking on the Baltimore Ravens this afternoon, 20-13. And we're just gonna do a little recap of some things we've kind of seen throughout the game, and maybe just some afterthoughts to probably take into next season. So, Corey, what are your first thoughts after the game?
I think it was a tale of two halves. Um, the first half they did good by winning. They didn't win the toss, but they did at the same time. And when the Ravens deferred because we got the ball first, but they went 4 and out, and that kind of was off to a bad start. But then on defense, they answered with a 4 and out. But the first half, to me, again, it was a tale of two halves, and I thought they were excellent defensively in the first half. They had 4 sacks. They were making Lamar uncomfortable. It was obvious that their defensive focus was on Lamar Jackson. It was kind of he's going to be their focal point. We're going to shut him down, and I think they did a pretty good job of that right up until the end of the first half, when they let him bust off that 48-yard touchdown run. That hurt them, and they had done so well in that, but it was just at the time they just lost him, and he just made them pay. I think when they set up the field goal, it was Adoree Jackson had terrible coverage ever since he's been back. He's had difficulty turning around and locating the ball, and he failed to do that. They got in good position to get in the end zone, and they almost did. I also was kind of it didn't really mean much at the time, but now looking back on it, when Malcolm Butler cut off Andrews and he almost got the interception in the end zone, the pass was incomplete, but an interception there completely takes points off the board, and these points started accumulating. And I think as the game began to go on in the first half, their offensive game plan after the touchdown with AJ Brown, it seemed like they were very timid. Like I didn't understand what was going on with this game, and then like I said, it never seemed like they had a clear game plan of where they were trying to go offensively. I was trying to figure out like what is going on. Like I mean, you knew that they were going to come in and try to stop Derrick Henry, but it was like what was the offensive goal? It never seemed clear. They never got going. Derrick Henry didn't have anywhere to go, and that may not completely be on our coaching staff, but I'm going to put the bulk of the blame on coaching staff and play calling. I thought it was nearly horrific, but I think it was excellent on the Ravens standpoint. They were upset about this game and the way that it played out emotionally, and they came in and they used that to their advantage, and they shut Derrick Henry down. Like I mean, they completely did. They were successful on that. The defense broke down after the 10 straight points, and it just seemed like it was one of those slow leak games where the air was coming out of the tires. And again, Adoree Jackson just got completely mauled in coverage on this game. They just knew, look, we're going to attack him. He's not going to be able to do anything. They took advantage. It was a game with two halves. Ultimately, the Ravens made the right shifts at halftime. The Titans did not.
Yeah,
And, that's really all there is to it.
yeah, I definitely agree with you, man. Because I know in the first quarter, man, because I was listening to him like on the radio, and I'm thinking to myself like, okay, are they cutting off all of his, up and down plays?
Yep.
We just going up and down. So they basically made Lamar Jackson move laterally, which is perfect to help contain Lamar Jackson. So the first quarter it was perfect. They got up to the 10-0 lead. I was like, man, you know what? If they can keep this up, we might
Yeah.
come out with a victory. But like you said, like the tell of two halves, I feel like for the defense at least, I think they started to get gas towards the end too as well.
Yeah.
With the weather, and just the fact that they have so many different ways to use Lamar Jackson, their tight ends and their running backs. You have to be on cue with the defensive side to make sure that hey, who do you have before this play snaps? Make sure that you stand with that person. If not, you have to communicate when you're on the field. And like you said, it got to the point where the Ravens they made adjustments after halftime, and the defense just wasn't prepared. And then coming over to the offensive side, just watching Derrick Henry a little bit in the play calling, it seemed like majority of the plays he was going up the middle. You know, Derrick Henry has enough speed where he can take bounce it off to the outside if he need to and cut up. And it wasn't enough plays to to better utilize Derrick Henry, I feel like. And then with Ryan Tannehill, and this is the thing with Tannehill, he's a great quarterback, but sometimes when he get pressured, he makes a lot of plays that are unnecessary. Just like, man, either throw it out or either go with your safe, running back that's out, to the side. And it kind of seemed like most of the time when he got rushed, he either panicked and just made like an ill-advised play. So
Yeah. You know,
it's
I was thinking about that in starting off this game. It seemed like the game was going really slow, really boring. But I looked up, kind of through that first half, he had about 140 yards. So he was moving the ball. The problem was he, coming out of the Pro Bowl selections, he felt like he got snubbed. And it was kind of like, it seemed like he was going to be like LeBron James and press that playoff button and implode. And he did, but it was in the wrong way. It seemed like every time he had the opportunity to prove I'm one of the top tier quarterbacks, when it really mattered, he collapsed. You look at some of the decisions he was making. I think, he looked down the field and he had a first read and he didn't pay attention to any of the other reads. It was either they're open and they're going to get me down or I'm going to force this pass in there. You look at, for the first time, I think, on this level, the offense was not playing with unity. They were upset at Tannehill. If you watch some of these plays they were doing, there was a play where Tannehill dropped back, nothing was open, his first, second read wasn't there, and Derrick Henry was wide open, moving out of the flat, and he just missed him. And Derrick Henry came off the field. I think he was hurt, but he was visibly upset that he missed him because he could have picked up the first down. You look at when Khalif Raymond was coming over the middle. They showed the replay. A.J. Brown was wide open. He's your best receiver. Corey Davis is not on the field. You've got to be looking, in crunch time, I've got to look for my best players. And I know Khalif Raymond was a guy who had that big catch against the Ravens last year, but it seemed like he dropped back, he was locked in on him, and he forced it at the time that he thought he had the best decision. And I think he probably could have got an easy touchdown or at least a big chunk of yards if he just gave the ball to A.J. Brown. I did not think that he played well. And it was, like I said, it just seemed like there was a slow leak when they closed the 10-0 gap. And it just never seemed like they were right mentally. And
yeah. Yeah, and like for me, just going back to that play, like right before he threw that interception, they showed that Corey Davis was on the sideline, and they also showed that he had 2 targets for 0 reception. So I don't know if Corey Davis was dealing with an injury, or what, but man, but whatever defensive scheme that we're using against Derrick Henry or against Corey Davis, it was taking Corey Davis out the game. So I don't know what that was too. So when they took out Corey Davis, they had to put in another wide receiver too, which was either Raymond or either Westbrook, I believe, the other wide receiver. So like everyone's probably thinking that if you have a good relationship with your wide receiver the entire season, which was A.J. Brown, who went over 1,000 yards and played exceptionally well, wouldn't you think that you'll be looking for him, especially right down the stretch when you need a big play? Like, wouldn't you be looking for A.J. Brown?
Yeah.
So it's definitely easier said than done, but it's one of those things where it's like, hey, if that's my go-to, if that's my safe route, if that's my most dependable wide receiver, I need to be going to him. So that was something that I think, kind of stood out to me, But my question to you is, so do you think just the fact that Corey Davis was kind of out for most of that fourth quarter, so did it have some type of effect to the offensive scheme, or was it already, it's kind of messed up after the second half? After the first half.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I think in the first half, generally they can get something going and say, you know what, we can look back. This is what we did well. I don't think there was anything they did very well in the first half to ride into the second half. So I think they kind of stalled out from the beginning. Again, they just didn't. It just never seemed like anyone knew what they were doing from the top to the bottom. Everybody just seemed like they were content with just being in the playoffs and they were just going to lose. But I think Corey Davis being out of the game did not help them at all. I don't know how much it hurt them, but it definitely didn't help them because what it allowed the Ravens to do was take away one side of the field. And, if we can double team A.J. Brown, who's one of the best receivers, and we don't have to worry about your second, deep, big body threat, well, yeah, I mean, we could just, little man these other guys. And so I think that definitely, I don't know what happened. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get to see what happened, but I think, you saw again on the sideline, he was obviously frustrated with whatever happened. And unfortunately, we can maybe get into this another day or another time. I think that may have been his last game. And I think if I'm Corey Davis, I'm content with that being my last game if that's the way we're going to play playoff football.
Yeah, yeah. And if you think about it, like this year, he had his best season as a Titan, and he was the most healthiest out of his other three seasons. So really, so Corey Davis' mind probably looking elsewhere towards another contract, or probably towards, hey, I almost got nearly 1,000 yards. I'll take this. Like you said, and like, I'm about to get paid again. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, when you look at how this game go, how do you, we talked about some of the X factors coming into this game. For you, it was Kevin Byard. For me, it was David Long. How do you feel like your X factor of the game played out in this one?
Yeah, man. Okay, so Kevin Byard, he played okay. The first quarter, it seemed like everyone was pretty much in sync. Everyone was
Yeah.
rolling. Just looking at the stat sheet, Kevin Byard he had about 5 total tackles and like four, I believe 2 or 3 solo tackles. So he was, making a mark on the field, but overall, he was a non-factor. I think.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to give it to someone, I would say Malcolm Butler probably was the best defensive piece out there. But Kevin Byard, I don't know if it was just the different schemes that the Ravens were throwing out on the offensive side. It just affected the gameplay for everyone. But I didn't think he really stepped up the way I thought he would in this matchup. What about your X factor?
Yeah. I thought, early, I was the same way. The defense it did, they seemed like they were very in sync. David Long and Desmond King, along with Kevin Byard, seemed like they were the focal points. They were when the run was, Lamar Jackson centered. It seemed like there were some times where they were very predictable for the Titans defense. And there were times where they were able to just say, this is what we practiced all week. But then when the misdirection came along, it was like they got lost. They broke down over time. And like you said, the defense just got gassed out. And I don't think that David Long, along with anybody defensively, was in sync in the second half. And, I thought that it was going to come to a point where they got tired of running the ball against the Titans because they weren't getting anywhere. And if they were going to beat us, they were going to beat us with Lamar Jackson's arm. And I think it completely takes the gas and all of the confidence out of the defensive scheme when they do what they're supposed to do and they have their way with you in the second half. It wasn't the passing game, even though he had more yards than I thought he would get in this game. They ultimately still beat us running the ball and doing it with the run pass option through Lamar Jackson. And that's what, it's kind of unfortunate that that was the way they got beat. You would have liked to, if they're going to beat us, they're going to have to beat us to the air. And ultimately, they were just able to impose their will. And to be honest, they deserved that game. They completely outplayed us and outcoached us on every level. They made all the adjustments. They made all the shifts. They used their emotions the way they should have. And, although it upset me that, they were on the logo, it was kind of like it was coming and they waited for it. They waited for it and they deserved it because again, they played with that emotion, that passion. They went out and they did what they were supposed to do. So I couldn't even really be that upset at the way they were celebrating at the end of the game. How did that make you feel when you saw them celebrate on the logo?
Just based on the last matchup, and just the way that the pregame, started, like when Malcolm Bullock just joined the Ravens coach. Personally as a Titans fan, I like, getting ready for a good game, but leave the talking and leave all the barking, all that. Look, show all that on the field. Stop all the talking. Just all the energy you putting towards trying to get someone aroused up or whatnot. Save it and show them what you can do instead of talking. And during that first matchup early in the season, hey, they stepped up and hey, we got the W. But this time, it, it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to be. Honestly, it didn't turn out. But as a fan, I didn't want to see it. But hey, it's a rivalry. And also just the fact of and also just the fact that the Titans and Ravens used to be AFC Central foes.
Right.
So this is one of those series where it'll all be a back and forth, regardless of the team's record. And it'll always be some bad blood. But I didn't like it. But whoever the Ravens have to see next, which may be either the Kansas City Chiefs or the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
They had their hands full. So
yeah.
hopefully all the talking and all the, cheering and whatnot on our, just stomping on our logo. I'm hoping that they bring that same energy for their next matchup coming up. Because they had their hands full, definitely.
Yeah, I think they definitely bring energy into the next game. But I don't know that energy is going to be able to take down, Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Those are two quarterbacks that are playing really good, two defenses that have really come along. So, they're definitely going to have their hands full. And the Titans would have had their hands full, but you would have at least got, like to get a chance. And, we talk about how they were celebrating and, it was much deserved, stomping on the logo as we did them. I'll tell you one thing that really stood out to me at the end of the game. I really do applaud Lamar Jackson for being professional and getting off the field. He wasn't with any of the extracurricular activity. He went straight to the locker room, celebrated with his guys. He came out, even in the post game interview, he was talking with the lady and she was talking about how the whole story was about Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. And he quickly redirected, no, this was a team game. He gave his props to Derrick Henry. And I'm happy for him. I really am. It was a much deserved win that he needed, even though I would have liked to see the Titans advance on to the next round of the playoffs. I think it was much deserved with all the hard work that he's put in. He finally locked in. It was about team game. And so, hey, we got to give their hats off to them. But, as we begin to kind of move this thing to a close, how do you rate the Titans season? Do you see it as a success, a failure? Are you kind of indifferent? And where do we move on from here?
Man, anytime the Titans aren't 9-7 is a good season for me.
Yeah.
And it just turned out, really just the way that we were able to win at least 11 games is a plus for me. But just really just the fact that we didn't have a defensive coordinator and it was like an obvious need for our team. Just the fact that we didn't address that just kind of upsets me a little bit. But just the fact that we were able to get 11 wins. But we did let a few games slip by this season. One that was obvious was the Cincinnati Bengals game where our defense was just out of sync from beginning to end. So that probably could have, set up like a different seeding for our matchup in the playoffs. But overall, I think it's still a success. We made it to the playoffs. We won our AFC divisional crown for the first time since 2012. So, we have a lot of accomplishments this season, but at the same time, like our obvious needs have to be addressed in the off season. So going from here, we need more defensive line help. So when it comes to that draft, this year we need definitely to address the defensive side of the ball, and to also bring in a defensive coordinator. Just someone just so Mike Vrabel can just have a little break so he can just be a head coach and just take care of those responsibilities instead of trying to juggle, hey, what place should we do here and this and that. So he can just be a head coach and just take on that position. Because at the same time, he's still because he's still young as being a head coach in the league, because he had a lot of coach positions, but as far as being a head coach, he's still young in that area. So hopefully they'll be able to bring a defensive coordinator for that part. Yeah. What about you?
I agree. The back-to-back 8-8, 9-7 seasons were getting kind of old. And so it was good. I call it a success. It's definitely in the regular season. You know, you go 11-5, like you said, you always have to call that a success from the Titans' perspective. But I think as you look um, by any other standards, I don't know that you really call it a success because there were so many teams that were in that 11-5, 10-6. It was kind of like we, just remained middle of the pack, just on a higher level. But I do still call it a success from a Titans perspective because of the games we were able to win. We were a top tier offense. And that's something that hasn't been talked about with the Titans for a long time. So I think you got to take the success in that. I think, moving forward, I'm right there with you. They've got some obvious needs they have to address on the defensive side of the ball. They've got to get a pass rush. They've got to get some more equipped defensive backs, and they've got to see what they're going to do with Vaccaro. How can they make some adjustments with Byard? And I think a lot of that falls into the fact that, like, we've been talking about since we started the show, defensive coordinator was absent. There was, I think they also lost their defensive backs coach. So those were two guys that they lost. So they're going to have to replace those guys with guys that Mike Vrabel can trust, that can scheme with him well. I thought they were a physical team all year. They were a team that played hard. They were a team to fear. But I think they've got to make some adjustments going forward. What happens when we can't get Derrick Henry going? Do we have something else that we can do to kind of counter the defensive attack? So I think they've got obvious needs they have to address on both sides of the ball. We talk about them needing to get a defensive coordinator. Well, the talk around the league also is that a lot of people are eyeing Arthur Smith as our offensive coordinator, and they may want him as the head coach. And so, that's one of the things that you do want to happen for your coaches as a head coach. But from a fan perspective, from a team perspective, you may be having to replace guys on both sides of the ball. So it will be very interesting seeing how John Robinson handles that. But ultimately, I think we call this year a success. You would have liked to see them go a little bit further with the offensive talent that they had, and then all we can do is wonder how great would they have been if Dean Pease stays, if we have the same defensive pieces that we had last year, and some of the things would have worked out. But I mean, that's one of the things that we just won't know. But at the end of the year, after this sour taste has gone out of our mouth, I think a lot of Titans fans look back and say, that's a successful season that I think we can at least live with. So, yeah, hats off to them. Well, maybe we'll come back on soon and kind of preview how the next few rounds of the playoffs go leading up to the Super Bowl, some of the wins, some of the losses. But for now, we appreciate you guys for sticking with us and continuing to stick with the Titans. Wish it would have been different. I wish we could have continued to talk about the Titans more after this, but we definitely appreciate you all support. Again, as always, follow us on Instagram at BALListic Report Sports. Continue to subscribe and send this video out to your family, to your friends, and other sports fans as we try to build this platform. Again, we appreciate your support, and we hope that you join us again next time on the BALListic Report.